America's silent triumph, unraveling the jaw-dropping details of how a submarine took down Japan's supercarrier, Shinano. As 1944 approached its end, the dwindling Japanese empire sought ways to resist the advancing Allied forces nearing the home islands. Some in the Navy hoped the massive, so-called unsinkable superships of the Yamato class could thwart the anticipated Allied attack on Okinawa. If Shinano had made it to her destination, she could have offered crucial air cover for her half-sister Yamato in Operation Tenichiko. However, this trust in supposedly unsinkable ships proved wrong, as subsequent events revealed the blunt truth. There's no such thing as an unsinkable ship. Join us as we delve into the sinking of a ship that was considered unsinkable. In the midst of World War II, Japan witnessed the construction of its larger aircraft carrier, the 72,000-ton Shinano. Progressing toward operational readiness, a pivotal moment occurred when the first B-29 Superfortress launched from Saipan. Conducting reconnaissance over the ship in dry dock at Yokosuka, the Japanese Naval Command swiftly realized that the Shinano needed relocation to avoid becoming a prime target for American heavy bombers. Despite being unfinished, with untested watertight doors, the ship was hurriedly launched on November 19, 1944, and made ready for sea. As initial B-29 attacks struck Tokyo from Saipan, the Japanese Naval Command ordered Shinano to set course for Kure in the southern Hiroshima prefecture on Japan's inland sea. The aim was to complete the final fitting out, with just a few months remaining before Japan could introduce a new aircraft seeking to challenge American dominance in the Pacific. The strategic moves and time constraints added a layer of urgency to Japan's efforts during this critical period. Darkly, as the ship left Yokosuka, it was packed with 50 of Japan's new suicide rocket planes. The virtually unstoppable Yokosuka MXY-7 Oka. A mere 755 were constructed during the last year of the war, and the 50 on the Shinano comprised a significant portion of those built at that time. These Okas were stowed in the Shinano's vast hangar bay, capable of accommodating 120 aircrafts. Unbeknownst to the Japan Naval Command, as the ship set sail, American code breakers were intercepting their messages. The top admirals of the U.S. Navy, alongside the U.S. Army and Army Air Forces, grappled with the challenge of sinking the Shinano, understanding the profound impact it could have on the war. The looming question was how to catch her. Japan's supercarrier, the Shinano, was not just the largest, but also the most heavily armored aircraft carrier ever crafted. Its flight deck featured a robust construction of 2 layers of steel, filled with shock-absorbing materials in between. The sides were shielded by steel plates, and even the fuel tanks, meant for servicing aircraft, were enveloped in poured concrete, built on the same hull design as the formidable Yamato and Musashi battleships. The Shinano was virtually impervious to the United States Navy's top dive bombers. The heaviest bombs in the Navy's arsenal stood no chance against its deck's armor. The ship's resilience meant that only land-based air power or a potential interception by U.S. naval assets held the capacity to pose a threat. As the Navy weighed its options, intercepting the Shinano presented challenges. Surface vessels faced difficulties due to the ship's short run down the coast, making successful interception unlikely. Additionally, dispatching American capital ships on the mission would expose them to Japan's land-based bombers and kamikaze aircraft. Submarine interception posed challenges too, given the Shinano's top speed surpassing what a surfaced submarine could achieve, making it likely to outpace any pursuer. Bombing from high-altitude aircraft was deemed difficult and probably ineffective, especially considering the limited operational B-29 Superfortresses on Saipan at that time. In essence, the available options were quite limited. As the ship set sail from Yokosuka on November 28, 1944, the Japanese Navy executed a bold raid on Isley Field in Saipan, causing damage to some of the bombers stationed there. This created a moment for the ship to reposition. At least, that was the hope of the Japanese Naval Command. Their main concern was the looming threat of an American submarine wolf pack, featuring a coordinated attack on the aircraft carrier as it sailed down the coastline towards Kure. Consequently, they deployed a substantial escort of destroyers to safeguard the ship from potential submarine attacks. As the ship set sail from Yokosuka on November 28, 1944, the Japanese Navy embarked on a bold raid of Isley Field in Saipan, causing damage to some bombers. This created a chance to relocate the ship, or so the Japanese Naval Command believed. Their primary concern was the looming threat of an American submarine wolf pack, which they feared could coordinate an attack on the colossal aircraft carrier as it navigated down the coastline toward Kure. Consequently, they assigned a substantial escort of destroyers to safeguard the ship from potential submarine assaults. As fate would have it, there wasn't an American submarine wolf pack in position. The only submarine with a shot at intercepting the Shinano was the one that had been spotted. Its primary role wasn't intercepting Japanese shipping. Rather, it served as a lifeguard vessel for downed B-29 flight crews near Japan's southern waves. Meet the USS Archer Fish, a Baleo-class submarine led by Commander Joseph F. Enright, USN. However, the Shinano outpaced the USS Archer Fish, which had made an initial interception but lagged far behind the Japanese vessels. Remarkably, Captain Toshio Abe of the Shinano, aware of potential submarine threats, initiated zigzag maneuvers to evade attacks. Unfortunately, 2 of the ship's 6 boilers were offline, and bearing issues on its shafts meant it ran on just 2 screws, reducing its speed. Consequently, the aircraft carrier matched the pace of the pursuing USS Archer Fish. Had the Shinano sailed straight down the coast towards Kure, the USS Archer Fish wouldn't have caught up. However, with each broad zigzag, the Shinano inadvertently closed the gap. 6 hours of chasing ensued, and finally, as the Shinano executed another hard turn on its zigzag course, it positioned the USS Archer Fish for a near-perfect interception. The submarine could now close in within the escort screen and launch torpedoes. No longer relying on the cover of night and pale moonlight, the submarine's commander instructed the USS Archer Fish to periscope depth. Advancing on an intersecting course, Commander Enright carefully observed through his periscope at one of the Japanese destroyers turned directly towards the USS Archer Fish. Concerned about being spotted, he swiftly ordered an emergency dive, lowering the periscope just in time. Unfortunately, the submarine was barely beneath the keel of the Japanese destroyer as it passed overhead. A tense moment ensued aboard the Archer Fish as the crew anticipated the sounds of depth charges. Remarkably, none came. Luck was on their side. The Japanese destroyer hadn't spotted the submarine. Now, having passed overhead, the Archer Fish found itself inside the escort screen, steadily closing in on the Shinano, which was running directly across her path as the Shinano came within range. Commander Enright and his crew calculated firing angles, setting the torpedo's depth for shallow. Acknowledging the heavy armor of the Shinano, Enright hoped to strike up near the waterline, aiming to induce a list in the aircraft carrier. With a firing solution calculated against the slowed carrier, Commander Enright hoped for the possibility of the Shinano capsizing. At 3:15 a.m., he gave the order for a rapid firing of 6 torpedoes, an incredibly short range for such an attack, as the Shinano was just 1,400 yards away. The 6 torpedoes ran true, striking the side of the massive aircraft carrier at a near-perfect angle. 4 out of the 6 torpedoes launched by Commander Enright found their mark on the Shinano, exploding in quick succession. Despite the blasts rocking the aircraft carrier, Captain Toshio Abe, confident in the ship's armor, maintained top speed. However, this proved to be a grave error. Below decks, the Shinano not only being holed, but was also moving at 18 knots, experiencing a catastrophic breach. The rushing water hydraulic millions of gallons of seawater into the ship, creating a dire situation. As the crew urgently closed the ship's untested watertight doors, shock rippled through them as rivets popped, causing many doors to flood back open. In certain scenarios, the flooding was so rapid that the crew had little hope of stopping it, leaving hundreds of men trapped on lower decks. Within minutes, the colossal aircraft carrier, once the world's largest, listed 10 degrees to starboard. Captain Abe ordered counter-flooding in an attempt to reduce the list, but this only provided partial relief. After 4 hours, the persistent flooding overwhelmed these defensive measures. The boilers were taken offline, and the ship began to settle. As the Shinano came to a full stop on the waves, its list increased to 30 degrees. With the flight deck now touching the water, the end loomed near. At 10:18 a.m., Captain Abe issued the order to abandon the ship. As the crew rushed topside and leaped into the water, the great vessel heeled over further. Tragically, the ship's main deck elevator's gaping hole began to take on water, acting like a massive drain, sweeping hundreds of men back into the sinking ship. At 10:57 a.m., the Shinano succumbed to its fate, capsizing and sinking beneath the waves. As she went down, 1,435 men, including Captain Abe, were pulled into the depths of the sea. The great ship met its end, just 120 miles off the coast of Japan. In the aftermath, 1,080 men managed to survive and were rescued by the ship's escorts, while the USS Archer Fish, under Commander Joseph F. Enright's command, discreetly slipped away unscathed. With the sinking of the Shinano, the looming threat of Japan's supercarrier was definitively extinguished. Undoubtedly, luck played a role, but it was also the culmination of efforts across the entire War Department, involving decoders, the USAAF, and the entire US Navy. In the final analysis, it boiled down to one submarine and a remarkably adept naval officer, Commander Joseph F. Enright, along with his dedicated crew. Their collective endeavor had successfully brought an end to the formidable menace of the Shinano. Now, let's delve into another chapter of aviation history, the Yokosuka MXY-7 Oka rocket kamikaze plane. A truly deadly weapon and arguably one of the most lethal aircraft types in the Japanese arsenal. In line with kamikaze missions, the pilots embraced a dire strategy, flying their planes directly into American ships, sacrificing their lives to inflict devastating damage. What set the Oka apart was its propulsion, powered by 3 solid-fuel rockets, unlike other slower propeller-driven kamikaze aircraft. Dubbed Baka by the Americans, translating to idiot, the Oka was designed to be dropped from another aircraft, typically a Mitsubishi G4M2E Betty Model 24J bomber, positioned beyond the reach of anti-aircraft fire. Pilots would then guide the Oka downward in a rapid glide, utilizing the rockets one by one to extend their range. The optimal scenario involved igniting all 3 rockets simultaneously in the final stages of the attack, propelling the Oka to an astonishingly near supersonic speed of 650 miles per hour as it descended upon its targets. At such formidable speeds, the traditional anti-aircraft fire proved futile against the compact Oka. Its remarkable velocity ensured that its 2,600-pound warhead could penetrate any armor plates installed for protection, making it a formidable and lethal force in the Pacific theater of World War II. During World War II, only 7 Okas were deployed, managing to strike 7 ships. The impact was significant. 3 ships sank, and 4 sustained such extensive damage that they were rendered inoperative, undergoing repairs for the remainder of the war. In hindsight, the loss of 50 Okas on the Shinano was arguably as consequential as the sinking of the aircraft carrier itself. This setback delayed the deployment of the most formidable kamikaze aircraft of its time by nearly 5 months, pushing its introduction to April 1945. As for the USS Archer Fish, 11 months before the Shinano attack, the crew gathered at Camp Dealey, Guam, on Christmas Day, 1944. The sinking of the Shinano marked the largest vessel ever sunk by a submarine to this day, which raises the question, what fate awaited the USS Archer Fish after this audacious attack? The sinking of the Shinano by USS Archer Fish marked a pivotal moment in naval history, with far-reaching implications that extended beyond the immediate impact of the Pacific theater of World War II. This audacious incident not only showcased the effectiveness of submarine warfare, but also influenced the trajectory of Japan's strategic decisions and the broader kamikaze tactics. The loss of the Shinano, Japan's supercarrier, dealt a severe blow to the Imperial Japanese Navy. Beyond the material loss of a significant naval asset, the sinking had strategic ramifications. The delay in deploying the deadly Yokosuka MXY-7 Oka rocket kamikaze planes, a delay caused by the loss of 50 Okas on the Shinano, allowed Allied forces valuable time to enhance their defensive measures. The extension of this critical timeline until April 1945 meant that the most lethal kamikaze aircrafts of the war saw limited action before the conflict's end. The USS Archer Fish's success in sinking the Shinano marked a turning point in submarine warfare. The incident demonstrated the potential of submarines as powerful offensive weapons capable of targeting even the largest and most heavily defended naval vessels. This realization influenced subsequent naval strategies, emphasizing the importance of anti-submarine warfare and evolving defensive tactics against submarine attacks. The sinking of the Shinano also underscored the vulnerability of aircraft carriers, challenging the prevailing belief in their invincibility. While carriers became central to naval operations, the Shinano's demise highlighted the need for improved protection and countermeasures against submarine threats. This lesson echoed through subsequent naval developments, shaping the design and deployment of future aircraft carriers. On a more immediate scale, the incident altered the dynamics of the Pacific theater. The loss of the Shinano disrupted Japanese naval operations, affecting their ability to project power and respond effectively to Allied advances. The psychological impact of the Japanese military and the broader populace was significant. The sinking of their supercarrier, previously considered impervious, shook confidence and raised doubts about the invincibility of their naval forces. For the USS Archer Fish and its crew, the successful attack on the Shinano elevated their status within the US Navy. It showcased the prowess of American submarine capabilities and bolstered morale among Allied forces. The crew's daring and effective execution of the mission reflected the resilience and adaptability of the US Navy in the face of evolving wartime challenges. The implication of the Shinano's sinking extended into the post-war era. As nations reflected on the lessons of World War II, the incident influenced naval doctrines and strategies in subsequent conflicts. The vulnerability of aircraft carriers to submarine threats remained a consideration, leading to ongoing advancements in anti-submarine warfare technologies and tactics. In the aftermath of the Shinano's sinking, Japan faced a strategic conundrum. The loss of their supercarrier not only weakened their naval capability, but also forced a reassessment of their kamikaze tactics. The delay in deploying the Yokosuka MXY-7 Oka rocket planes allowed Allied forces to adapt and fortify their defenses, mitigating the potential impact of these lethal kamikaze weapons. The incident also reverberated through international perceptions of naval power. The successful attack on the Shinano by a submarine challenged the prevailing narrative of surface vessels dominating naval warfare. This shift influenced post-war naval doctrines, leading to continued advancements in submarine technologies and tactics. The strategic importance of submarines in modern naval operations can be traced back to the success of missions like that of the USS Archer Fish. For the crew of the USS Archer Fish, the sinking of the Shinano became a defining moment in their wartime service. Their audacious mission showcased the effectiveness of American submarine warfare and earned them recognition within the US Navy. The crew's adaptability and skill in executing a mission of such magnitude underscored the importance of well-trained and resourceful submarines in the overall Allied war effort. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider liking it and stay tuned for more content just like this.